Before we begin tonight's journey, let me ask you something. Where are you listening from? Perhaps a quiet bedroom, perhaps far across the world. And what time is it where you are? Midnight, maybe? Or the calm hours just before dawn? Wherever you are, and whenever you are listening, I am so grateful that you are here. If you find peace in these stories, I kindly invite you to like this video and subscribe. Not for me alone, but so that more dreamers, wanderers, and seekers of calm can discover these journeys too. Your small gesture helps this circle of rest grow wider, so that more people can drift into sleep, carried by history and story. Now, settle in, breathe deeply. The ocean of time lies before us, and tonight we begin a voyage across the vast Pacific. The Pacific Ocean stretches wider than the imagination, an endless canvas of water, stars, and wind. To many, it seems like an impossible barrier, a void that separates worlds. But to the ancient Polynesians, it was not a barrier at all. It was a highway, a living pathway woven of currents, constellations, and the steady rhythm of the waves. Imagine the world 1,000 years ago. Europe was building castles. The Middle East thrived with great cities. And across the far reaches of the Pacific, navigators were preparing their canoes for journeys that would cross thousands upon thousands of kilometers, journeys that would bring human life to the most remote islands on Earth. These voyagers traveled in great catamarans, double-hulled canoes bound together by ropes of coconut fiber, their sails stitched from woven pandanus leaves. The canoes were strong yet flexible, able to dance with the ocean rather than break against it. On them, families carried not only food and water, but pigs, chickens, and crops. These vessels were more than boats. They were floating worlds. To guide them, navigators turned to the sky. They read the stars like words on a page. Each constellation pointed the way, rising and setting at fixed points on the horizon. But starlight was not the only guide. The sea itself spoke to those who knew how to listen. The roll of swells, the shape of clouds, the flight of birds, all whispered of land beyond sight. Knowledge of these signs was never written down. It lived in memory, passed from teacher to student, from elder to apprentice. A navigator would lie for hours in the hull of a canoe, feeling the rhythm of the waves against his body, learning how one current revealed the nearness of an island hidden just over the horizon. Across generations, island after island was settled. From Samoa and Tonga, voyagers sailed to Tahiti, the Cook Islands, and beyond. Over centuries, their network stretched across an ocean larger than all the continents combined. And then, somewhere around the 13th century, came perhaps the boldest journey of all, the voyage southward into uncharted waters, to a place no Polynesian had ever seen, a land still empty of people. This was Aotearoa, what we now call New Zealand. To reach it meant sailing into colder seas, past storms and unfamiliar winds, yet the navigators believed it could be found. Legends spoke of distant lands to the south. And so, they raised their sails and trusted the wisdom carried in their bones, setting course into the unknown. From those who made the crossing came the ancestors of the Māori, a people whose traditions, songs, and carvings still speak of the ocean voyages that gave them their home. Tonight, we will follow in their wake, not in haste, not in fear, but slowly and calmly, as though seated in a canoe beneath a sky filled with stars. Each chapter will carry us forward through preparation, departure, the long weeks at sea, and finally, the sight of new land rising from the horizon. Let the sound of waves in your mind guide you. Let the stars of history shine quietly above, and let the story of the great Pacific navigators become a gentle current carrying you deeper and deeper into rest. Chapter 1. The Ocean as a Highway. The Pacific Ocean is vast beyond comprehension. Covering nearly 1/3 of the Earth's surface, it stretches farther than the human eye can see and deeper than any mountain is tall. For many cultures, the ocean is a boundary, a force that isolates, a wall of water that divides. But for the ancestors of the Polynesians, it was the opposite. The ocean was a road, a bridge, a living being that could be understood and trusted. Long before compasses or maps, before the idea of the globe was even imagined, these voyagers knew the Pacific not as emptiness, but as a space alive with signs. They saw the sea as a language. Its grammar was written in the shape of waves, its punctuation marked by the calls of seabirds, and its poetry traced in the movement of stars. To those who could read it, the Pacific revealed pathways invisible to others. Centuries before the first steps toward New Zealand were taken, Polynesian navigators had already achieved something extraordinary. Island after island, they expanded across the ocean, from Samoa and Tonga outwards to Tahiti, Rarotonga, Hawaii, and Easter Island. Each voyage was a thread, and together they wove a net across the sea, a network of settlements, kinship, and trade stretching across thousands of kilometers. At the center of this achievement were the canoes. These were not fragile vessels, but masterpieces of engineering. Carved from great logs, lashed together with coconut fiber ropes, and balanced with outriggers or double hulls, the canoes could bend with the ocean's will. Where rigid ships might splinter, these vessels flexed like living creatures, their strength lying in their harmony with the sea. The catamaran, or double canoe in particular, was a marvel. Two hulls side by side created both balance and space. Families could travel, food could be stored, and the journey could last not days, but weeks and months. The sails caught more than wind. They caught ambition, memory, and courage. Made from woven pandanus leaves, they rose like wings, carrying the voyagers into the unknown. Every journey was both practical and sacred. To set out on the ocean was not merely to move from one place to another. It was to enter into dialogue with the ancestors, to trust in their wisdom and guidance. In Polynesian tradition, the sea is not an enemy. It is kin. Myths tell of gods who shape the waves, of ancestors who transformed into stars to guide their descendants. The ocean, in this worldview, is alive, full of voices. And so, sailing was never an act of defiance against nature. It was an act of listening. Imagine for a moment standing on the shore of a Pacific island centuries ago. The night is warm, the sky is dense with stars. The canoe waits on the sand, its hulls polished, its ropes strong. Families gather, singing softly, sending blessings for the voyage ahead. The navigator walks slowly toward the canoe, eyes lifted not at the land he is leaving, but at the horizon he cannot yet see. He knows, with a confidence born of training and tradition, that the ocean holds a path, if only he listens. Knowledge of this path was guarded, preserved like a sacred flame. Navigators spent years in apprenticeship. They memorized star paths, long chains of constellations that rose and set at predictable points. They learned to feel swells through their bodies, lying in the canoe and letting the rhythm press against their skin. They studied the habits of birds, how terns would leave land at dawn and return at dusk, how frigate birds avoided sleeping on the water and so always pointed toward land. They even read the color of clouds, knowing that certain formations reflected the presence of islands far beyond sight. This knowledge created not only skill, but identity. The navigator was not simply a sailor, he was a bridge between his people and the infinite sea. He carried the safety of families, the survival of culture, and the promise of new lands in his mind. And so, the Pacific became more than water. It became a map, a mental geography where islands were not isolated specks, but nodes in a vast connected world. Oral traditions remembered voyages that stretched across generations. A story told in Tahiti could echo in Samoa. A chant sung in Hawaii could recall ancestors from the Marquesas. Across distances that would stagger other civilizations, Polynesian voyagers built a web of kinship. The ocean was their highway, and their catamarans were the carriages that traveled upon it. With every successful crossing, their confidence grew. If they could reach so far, what else lay beyond the horizon? It is in this spirit that the first voyagers toward Aotearoa prepared themselves. They knew that journeys had carried their people outward across the ocean like ripples on a pond. They trusted that the southern horizon held something yet unseen. To reach it would demand courage, skill, and faith. But for those born of the ocean, this was not impossible. It was destiny. As the night sky arched above them, the stars seemed to whisper the same truth. There is always another path, another island, another beginning. And so, with double-hulled canoes steady on the sand, sails ready to drink the wind, and hearts steady with ancestral songs, the voyagers set their gaze upon the horizon, the infinite road of the Pacific. Chapter 2. The Navigators. The double-hulled canoes were the body of exploration, but the soul of the voyage lay in the minds of the navigators. Among the Polynesians, navigators were both scientists and priests, both practical leaders and keepers of sacred tradition. Their training was as demanding as any warriors, but it was not measured in battles. It was measured in memory, patience, and the ability to surrender to the rhythms of nature until those rhythms became part of their own heartbeat. To outsiders, the art of wayfinding might seem impossible. No compass, no sextant, no map, only sky and sea. Yet through generations, navigators created a mental library of astonishing accuracy. They did not simply know where they were, they knew how the ocean itself whispered direction. Night after night, apprentices lay on their backs, staring into the great dome of the heavens. Each star was not just a point of light, but a marker on a road. Rising in the east, traveling across the sky, sinking in the west. Every star had its place and time. Navigators memorized star lines, chains of stars that could be followed from horizon to horizon. When one star dipped, another rose, and so the path continued, like beads on an invisible necklace encircling the earth. They knew the names of hundreds of stars. They knew which ones aligned with which islands. In chants and songs, these paths were preserved. A navigator's voice became his map, his chant a chart. By repeating them aloud, he carried islands and oceans inside his memory. But stars alone were not enough. The sky could cloud, storms could hide the heavens for days. When that happened, the sea itself became the guide. Waves in the open Pacific are not random. Swells roll in long, steady lines, driven by distant winds. Navigators felt these swells through their own bodies. They would sit in the canoe, close their eyes, and let the rhythm press into them. A rise, a fall, a subtle tilt to the left or right. From this, they could tell the direction of the dominant swell. And if they noticed a second swell cutting across it, they knew another weather system was in play, perhaps generated by land beyond the horizon. Some navigators practiced this skill so deeply that even in total darkness, they could tell if the canoe had shifted by a single degree. Their bodies became compasses, their skin the instrument that felt the sea's music. Birds were also companions and guides. Frigate birds, unable to sleep on the water, always returned to land by nightfall. Terns flew in predictable arcs to feeding grounds and back. Watching their flight, navigators learned the direction of unseen shores. Clouds, too, carried messages. A long, flat-bottomed cloud could reflect the outline of an island below. The color of the sea itself would shift near land, taking on a lighter green or blue as coral reefs rose from the depths. Floating debris, driftwood, or even the scent of blossoms carried far on the wind, all told the navigator that land was near. Becoming a navigator was not a simple matter of study. It was a lifetime of discipline. Young boys chosen for training would spend years under the eye of a master. They learned chants that described entire voyages, encoded as poetry. They memorized constellations, bird behavior, wave forms, and seasonal winds. Nothing was written. Every scrap of knowledge was carried in the body and mind. Tests were harsh. An apprentice might be taken far out to sea, set adrift, and told to find his way home using only what he had learned. Failure meant shame. Success meant honor, and the right to one day guide a canoe across the horizon. Knowledge was power, and so it was guarded carefully. Not everyone could become a navigator. The secrets of wayfinding were entrusted to chosen families, passed down like heirlooms, preserved through chants and rituals. In this way, even as centuries passed, the skill never faded. To Polynesians, navigation was more than technique. It was sacred. The stars were seen as ancestors. The ocean was a living being. To guide a canoe was to converse with gods and spirits. A navigator stood not only between islands, but between worlds, human and divine. Ceremonies marked departures. Prayers and offerings were given. Failure at sea was not only personal loss, but cosmic imbalance. A navigator carried responsibility for the lives aboard, for the crops and animals stowed on deck, and for the honor of the ancestors watching from the heavens. Imagine for a moment lying in the hull of a canoe beneath a sky so clear that stars shimmer like grains of sand scattered across black stone. The navigator is silent, eyes half closed. He feels the swell beneath his body. He hears the wings of birds returning to land. He smells the faint, sweet breath of blossoms drifting from an unseen island. With these subtle signs, he knows the canoe's position better than any modern GPS. Yet, he does not boast. His duty is quiet, calm, without arrogance. A navigator must balance courage with humility, daring with patience. When storms rose, When days passed without stars, when supplies ran low, it was the navigator's calm that steadied the crew. He reminded them that the ocean was not endless chaos, but a patterned world waiting to be read. He reminded them that their ancestors had crossed before, and that they too would arrive. Generations of voyagers trusted such navigators. Island after island was found, settled, named, remembered. And still, curiosity and whispers of new lands pulled them onward. Southward, beyond familiar seas, lay a mystery. Birds were seen flying farther than usual, disappearing into the distance. Legends spoke of a great land, cold and green, hidden in mists. Navigators began to prepare. They studied star lines that pointed south. They memorized the swells of unfamiliar waters. They watched for signs of new weather, colder winds that hinted at lands yet unseen. The journey to Aotearoa would demand the full mastery of their art. Stars, waves, birds, and memory, all would be tested. But the navigators did not doubt. The ocean had always spoken to them. It would speak again. Chapter 3. Life at Sea. The canoe is not just a vessel. It is a village set afloat. When the Polynesians set sail into the wide Pacific, they did not travel empty-handed. They carried entire worlds with them, families, animals, crops, and stories. Each voyage was not a quick dash across the horizon, but a floating migration, prepared to last weeks or even months. Picture the deck of a great double-hulled canoe at dawn. The two hulls rock gently with the rhythm of swells. Between them, a platform stretches, wide enough for families to sit, for baskets to be stored, for fires to smolder in stone-lined pits. Smoke curls upward into the morning air, carrying with it the scent of taro roots roasting slowly. Pigs grunt softly, tied near the stern. Chickens cluck and scratch in woven cages. Calabashes filled with fresh water are tucked securely in shaded corners. Bundles of sugarcane, coconuts, yams, and breadfruit are stacked carefully, each item chosen not only for nourishment, but for its ability to sprout and grow again once new land is found. These canoes carry not only food for survival, but seeds of future gardens. Children wake and rub their eyes. They are not afraid of the ocean. They have grown up with it. To them, the deck is a playground, the waves a lullaby, the horizon a familiar friend. Life aboard follows the rhythm of the sun and the sea. At sunrise, tasks begin. Fires are tended. Food is prepared. Nets are checked for fish, sometimes drawn directly from the ocean to feed the crew. Men patch sails, repair ropes, or bail water from the hulls. Women care for children, sort food, weave mats, or prepare tools. Every person has a role. No one is idle, for survival depends on balance. The canoe is a delicate ecosystem, and harmony is essential. Too much carelessness, and supplies could spoil. Too much tension, and morale could collapse. But with rhythm, with steady hands and patient voices, the canoe becomes a home. Meals are simple but sustaining. Fish grilled over embers, taro steamed in leaves, coconut water shared from a cracked shell. Sometimes flying fish leap directly onto the deck, as though the ocean itself is offering its gift. Fresh water is precious. Stored in gourds and bamboo tubes, it is rationed carefully. Navigators know the signs of approaching rain and prepare to catch it in woven mats or carved troughs. A sudden downpour is not a nuisance, but a blessing, filling the water stores and refreshing parched lips. Work fills the day, but so do words. To keep spirits strong, the crew sings. Songs rise into the salt air, carried by the wind like sails themselves. Some songs are practical, chants that set rhythm for paddling or hauling ropes. Others are ancient, telling of ancestors who crossed before, reminding the voyagers that they are never alone. Children listen wide-eyed to stories told beneath the stars. Legends of Maui, who fished up islands with his hook. Tales of gods who shaped the waves and winds. These stories are more than entertainment. They are maps of memory, teaching courage, identity, and belonging. Voyages are sacred undertakings. Before departure, ceremonies honor the gods and ancestors. During the journey, rituals continue. Offerings of food are cast into the waves to thank the ocean for its guidance. Silent prayers are whispered when storms rise. A navigator might chant softly to the stars, asking for clarity, asking for the ancestors to light the way. Even ordinary acts take on a sacred air, lighting the fire each morning, sharing the first piece of fish, speaking the names of the stars before sleep. These rituals stitch the crew together, weaving discipline and faith into their days. Yet life at sea is not always gentle. Storms sweep across the Pacific with sudden fury. Winds howl, rain lashes, and waves rise like walls of moving stone. In those moments, fear grips the crew. Children cry, ropes strain, sails tear, but still they endure. The double hulls, flexible and strong, ride out the violence better than rigid ships might. And the navigator, calm at the center, reminds them that storms are not endless. They too pass. Hunger can strike when fish are scarce or when supplies spoil. Thirst can grow heavy when rains do not come. Skin burns beneath the tropical sun. Salt stings the lips, the eyes, the wounds of work. Yet through endurance, the crew learns patience. Every hardship becomes another lesson, another proof of their resilience. Over time, the canoe becomes more than wood and sail. It becomes family. Bonds grow deep, forged in the fire of survival and shared hope. Strangers become kin. Children grow bold. Elders grow respected. Everyone aboard carries the same dream, that one day soon, land will rise from the horizon, green and alive, waiting to be called home. And then, in some canoes, whispers grow of a land beyond all known horizons, a place of cooler winds, of great forests, of mountains wrapped in mist. Southward, the stories say, lies Aotearoa, New Zealand. To reach it will take weeks, perhaps months. The seas will be rougher, the winds colder. But the voyagers do not falter. Their floating world is strong. Their navigator listens to the ocean's voice, and above, the stars wheel in their eternal patterns, as though to say, yes, the way is open. Chapter 4. Island Encounters. The ocean may appear endless, but scattered across its vast expanse are stepping stones of land. To the untrained eye, these islands seem impossibly small against the Pacific's immensity. Yet, for the voyagers, they were familiar havens, places to rest, to trade, to renew strength, and to weave new strands of kinship. After weeks at sea, there is a moment when the horizon changes. A line of clouds takes on a darker shade, as if shadows stir beneath them. Birds wheel and circle in larger numbers. The water grows shallower, its color shifting from deep indigo to turquoise. Then, like a dream breaking through mist, an island rises. Cries of joy ring from the canoe. Children point. Adults smile with relief. The navigator nods quietly, as though he has been waiting for this moment all along. Sails are lowered. Paddles dip into the surf. The double hulls ride the breakers carefully. Islanders gather on the beach, their voices carrying across the waves. Sometimes they shout warnings, sometimes they sing words of welcome. In every encounter, caution mixes with curiosity. The voyagers bring gifts, fine mats woven with skill, shells from distant reefs, and above all, stories. In return, they may be offered fresh water, fruits, or fish. These exchanges are more than survival. They are rituals of connection. Across centuries, these encounters formed a vast network. Polynesians did not think of their world as isolated dots of land. They thought of it as a sea of relatives, cousins in Samoa, allies in Tahiti, ancestors in Hawaii. Each voyage strengthened this web, turning the Pacific into a community bound not by roads, but by currents. A family setting out from one island could arrive at another and find distant kin ready to welcome them. Genealogies carried across the ocean were recited aloud, names tying strangers together as relatives. In this way, the ocean did not divide. It united. At night, around fires on unfamiliar beaches, voyagers and islanders told stories. Legends of gods who pulled islands from the sea, tales of great storms and miraculous survivals, songs that celebrated canoes as living beings, born of forests and given souls by their makers. Children listened, eyes wide, to songs they had never heard before but somehow recognized. The rhythm was different, the words new, but the heart was the same. This was the strength of Polynesian culture. Diversity within unity, variety woven into a single cloth of tradition. Islands were also places of renewal. Fresh water was drawn from clear streams. Coconut groves provided food and fiber. Fish traps in lagoons yielded abundance. Canoes were repaired with new timber, sails patched with pandanus leaves, ropes strengthened with fibers taken from local plants. Each stop meant survival. Each stop was a chance to continue the greater journey. Not every encounter was peaceful. Sometimes, suspicion outweighed trust. Islanders feared strangers arriving with unknown intentions. Voyagers worried about being attacked or turned away. Weapons were kept near at hand, though rarely raised. In most cases, diplomacy prevailed, for both sides knew that violence threatened survival. But the risk remained. To land on an unknown shore was always to step into uncertainty. Courage was needed not only to cross the sea, but also to face the unknown welcome of other people. Each island visit added to the navigator's knowledge. The shapes of mountains, the colors of reefs, the flight paths of birds, all were remembered and recited. These details became part of the mental map that stretched across the Pacific. An island once visited was never forgotten. Its name, its resources, its stories were carried home and passed down. This oral memory was astonishing in its accuracy. Generations could recall the shape of islands they had never personally seen, guided only by the words of their elders. In this way, the Pacific was charted long before any European maps were drawn. For some voyagers, island encounters were pauses before returning home. For others, they were stepping stones toward something greater. Southward, beyond the familiar chains, lay mystery. Islanders spoke of lands farther away, colder winds, and larger birds. Rumors hinted at a great country hidden in mist, a place that would one day be called Aotearoa. Every island encounter thus became both an ending and a beginning, a moment of rest, but also a spark of curiosity. If there was always another island beyond the horizon, then the journey could never truly end. As canoes left the beaches, islanders stood waving, their voices carrying across the surf. The voyagers raised their sails, hearts full of gratitude, stomachs full of food, minds full of new stories. The ocean once again opened before them, not as a barrier, but as a pathway to the next horizon. And as stars rose overhead, the navigator whispered their names steady and calm, for the canoe once more moved into the great expanse. Guided by memory, strengthened by kinship, and driven by the unending pull of discovery. Chapter 5. The Long Voyage South. The canoe leaves the warmth of the familiar islands. Behind lies the circle of kin, the known stars, the gentle trade winds. Ahead lies a direction less certain, south. The first sign is not visible but felt. The air shifts. The winds blow cooler, carrying scents unfamiliar, sharp, brisk, edged with salt and mystery. Clouds thicken, and the rhythm of the swells deepens. The crew tightens cloaks around their shoulders. Even in the tropics, nights at sea can be cool, but now the chill lingers through the day. Children huddle near their parents. Fires are tended more carefully, coals guarded against wind and spray. To sail south is to enter waters unlike the steady trade routes of the equator. Here, winds are restless, shifting without warning. Storms roll in with little mercy. Waves rise higher, their faces cut with white foam. The canoe creaks, yet it holds, its twin hulls flexing with each surge. The navigator is tested. Star lines shift as the familiar constellations sink lower on the horizon. New stars appear, strange and bright, requiring new chants to be composed, new patterns to be remembered. The Southern Cross, tilted and steady, becomes a guide. Birds, too, are different. Albatross wheel above the waves, wings stretching wider than a man is tall. They glide effortlessly for days, showing the crew that land, though distant, may still lie ahead. Days blur into weeks. Supplies must be rationed carefully. Every coconut, every taro root, every drop of water matters. Hunger gnaws, but discipline keeps the crew steady. Songs are sung to lighten the hours. Children learn chants to distract them from the emptiness in their stomachs. At night, under blankets of stars, the voyagers remind one another why they press on. They are not adrift without purpose. They are searching for land foretold in story and dream, a land said to be vast, green, and rich with forests. Storms strike without mercy. The sky darkens, winds howl, rain lashes the deck. The canoe rises and plunges, spray soaking every face. In those moments, prayers rise louder than the waves. Offerings are cast into the sea, begging the ocean to spare them. And yet, as quickly as storms come, they pass. The sea falls calm, glassy, endless, sometimes too calm. With no wind to fill the sails, the canoe drifts. The crew paddles, but progress is slow. Patience is tested, faith stretched thin. Still, they endure. At night, voyagers dream of land. In their minds they see green valleys, tall trees, rivers running swift and cold. They imagine firelight on new shores, gardens planted, children running barefoot across fresh grass. These dreams are more than fancy. They are anchors, keeping hope alive when the horizon offers nothing but water. Elders tell stories to feed that hope. They speak of Maui pulling up islands with his hook. They say the ancestors themselves sail alongside, unseen but present, guiding the canoe. The youngest children fall asleep listening, their breathing soft against the steady pulse of the waves. Then come signs, a floating branch, weathered yet fresh, kelp drifting in long ribbons across the surface, birds flying not in wide, aimless arcs but in purposeful paths, as though commuting between sea and shore. The crew leans forward, hearts quickening. The navigator studies each clue. He watches the angle of swells, the flight of birds at dusk, the color of the clouds at sunrise. Slowly, a picture forms in his mind. Land is near, and then, faint, distant, but undeniable, a shadow on the horizon. At first it seems a trick of the clouds, but as hours pass, the shape hardens. Peaks rise, dark and sharp, wrapped in mist. Forests cloak the slopes, green against the gray of sky and sea. Cries break from the canoe. Tears flow, hands reach upward in thanks. The long voyage has brought them to the edge of a new world. This is not a small atoll, nor a narrow reef. This is a vast land, greater than any they have ever seen. Rivers run down its sides, valleys open like arms, birds cry out, their wings flashing against the sky. It is Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. As the canoe glides closer, awe settles over the crew. They know that what lies ahead will change everything. Gardens will be planted, settlements will rise, songs will be composed, stories told. Their children's children will call this land home. For now, though, they are simply voyagers, weary and grateful, stepping from the endless blue into the green embrace of a new world. Chapter 6. First landfall in Aotearoa. The long white cloud drapes across the horizon like a banner of promise. Beneath it, the coast of Aotearoa stretches wide and green. For weeks, the voyagers have dreamed of this moment, and now it rises before their eyes. Mountains wrapped in mist, forests unbroken, rivers rushing down toward the sea. As the canoe draws nearer, every sound seems sharper. The crash of surf against rocky headlands, the cry of seabirds circling overhead, the hiss of wind through the rigging. The navigator raises his hand, calling for patience. To approach a new land is to approach both gift and danger. Reefs may hide just below the surface. Currents may pull strong against the shore. The crew lowers the great sails. Paddles dip, guiding the canoe with care. Children huddle close, sensing the weight of the moment. Elders whisper prayers, giving thanks to the ancestors and to Tangaroa, guardian of the sea, who has carried them safely. At last, the hulls scrape gently against sand. Voyagers leap into the shallows, water splashing cool against their legs. Hands pull the canoe higher onto the beach. Then, silence falls. For a heartbeat, no one moves. They simply stand, gazing inland. Forests tower above them, alive with the calls of unfamiliar birds. Ferns unfurl in spirals at their feet. The air smells of earth, moss, and rain. It is richer, cooler, denser than the warm winds of the tropics. Then, slowly, feet press into the soil. Children run forward, laughing. Elders sink to their knees, scooping up earth, pressing it to their foreheads in reverence. Tears mingle with the salt still on their cheeks. Land. Solid, generous, waiting. Small groups scatter to explore. Some walk along the beach, studying shells and driftwood. Others climb the nearest slope, gazing across valleys of green. Birds wheel in flocks above, their cries echoing. The voyagers marvel at the size of the trees, towering giants, trunks wide enough that several people could not encircle them with arms joined. Streams of fresh water run clear and cold. Children drink greedily, the chill shocking after weeks of rationed supplies. Baskets are filled. Laughter rings out as they splash one another, life returning in every drop. As with every discovery, the land is given names. Names preserve memory, mark presence, and honor ancestors. Mountains are compared to great figures of the past. Rivers are named for their clarity, their speed, their song. The voyagers call the land Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. Songs will be composed, chants repeated, so that generations yet unborn will know this moment. The act of naming transforms arrival into belonging. Seeds carried from distant islands are brought ashore. Taro, yam, gourd, kumara, each planted in careful plots. The soil is rich, though the climate is colder than the crew has ever known. Not every plant will thrive. Yet with patience and care, new gardens will rise. Animals, too, are released. Pigs sniff at the earth. Chickens scratch at the ferns. Dogs run barking along the shore, chasing the calls of seabirds. Life that once belonged to faraway islands now takes root in this new home. Yet wonder is mingled with caution. The forests are vast, their shadows deep. Strange cries echo through the trees, not all of them birds. The voyagers know they are not the first to set foot here. Signs of earlier arrivals, charred stones from old fires, footprints along riverbanks, remind them that Aotearoa is not empty. Still, there is room. Valleys stretch for miles, rivers weave endlessly. The land feels immense, enough to hold many families, many stories. As dusk falls, a fire is kindled on the beach. Flames leap upward, crackling against the evening chill. Around it the voyagers gather, sharing the first meal cooked on new soil. Fish caught from the river, roots gathered nearby, taro roasted in embers. Songs rise into the night, mingling gratitude with hope. Children fall asleep beside the fire, heads resting on woven mats, the scent of smoke and earth around them. Above, new constellations gleam, southern stars bright and strange, as if welcoming the voyagers into their domain. The navigator gazes upward, memorizing their patterns. Already, chants form in his mind. Already, knowledge begins to grow. Morning comes, crisp and cold. Mist curls across valleys. The voyagers rise, their breath visible in the chill air. This land will demand strength, adaptation, resilience. But it will also give in abundance. Timber for canoes, stone for tools, rivers for fishing, soil for gardens. They stand together, looking inland. A journey has ended, but another has begun. They are no longer only voyagers, they are settlers. Soon they will be ancestors. And as the long white cloud drifts overhead, they whisper thanks once more, knowing that their children's children will tell this story as the moment when sea became land and wanderers became home. Chapter 7. Building Settlements and the Birth of a New Culture. The voyagers had arrived. Yet arrival was not an ending. It was the beginning of transformation. On the shores where the double-hulled canoes had landed, fires were lit every morning. Smoke curled upward, signaling that the voyagers were no longer adrift. They were rooted now, their lives stretching outward into forest, river, and valley. Shelters rose first. Poles cut from towering trees were lashed together with fiber. Roofs of flax and raupo reeds were woven, angled steeply to shed the southern rains. The canoes, once homes themselves, now rested on the beach as guardians, reminders of the sea that had carried everyone here. Small villages formed, each one hugging the edge of a river or a bay. Paths cut through the ferns, linking gardens to hearths, gardens to streams, streams to the sea. The seeds carried from Polynesia were planted, yet the land spoke its own language. The climate was colder. Winters bit deeper. Some plants struggled. But Kumara, the sweet potato, found a place, nurtured with careful mounding of soil and protection from frost. Gourd, taro, and yam adapted only in certain regions, teaching the people to listen to the earth, to learn what it would give and what it would withhold. New foods were discovered, fern roots roasted in embers, berries gathered from forest edges, eels from winding rivers, their slippery bodies woven into stories and rituals. Birds that filled the skies were snared, their feathers becoming both food and adornment. Slowly, the voyagers became gardeners of a new world. The forests and mountains offered materials unknown in the tropics. Stone lay in abundance, sharp and strong. It became adzes for carving, chisels for shaping, weapons for defense. Punamu, greenstone, gleamed in rivers of the South Island, prized for its beauty and resilience. Bone, too, was shaped into tools. Dog bone carved into hooks, bird bone into flutes, whale bone into ornaments worn with pride. Every material was sacred, its use guided by respect. Wood from tall kauri and totara trees became great waka, canoes, stronger and longer than those of the islands, built to navigate rivers and seas alike. Villages echoed with the rhythm of adzes striking wood, shaping both tools and culture. The house, or where, became the center of life. Its walls of reeds and wood enclosed warmth against the cold. Mats of flax softened the floor. Fires glowed at night, smoke drifting through vents cut in the roof. Here, families gathered to eat, to tell stories, to rest. Over time, these structures grew more elaborate. Meeting houses rose, carved with figures of ancestors, their eyes set with shell that gleamed in firelight. These were not only places of shelter, but of memory, linking the living to those who had crossed oceans before them. Life followed the turning of seasons. Spring brought planting, summer growth, autumn harvest, winter storage. Men hunted, fished, and carved. Women wove, planted, and prepared food. Children learned by doing, their small hands practicing the tasks that would one day be theirs. Work was constant, but so was joy. Songs rose with planting, chants guided fishing, dances celebrated harvest. In every task, rhythm connected body, spirit, and land. The old stories of the islands were remembered, Yet new stories grew here too. Mountains were given names and spirits. Rivers were said to carry guardians. Birds became messengers, their calls woven into chants. Ancestral figures were remembered not only as seafarers, but as founders of valleys and protectors of forests. Slowly, the identity of the people shifted. They were no longer only children of the tropics. They were becoming Tangata Wenua, people of the land. Villages expanded. Canoes set out along coasts, exploring farther bays and harbors. Families branched into hapu, sub-tribes, each with its own leaders, its own gardens, its own sacred places. Yet kinship tied them together. Genealogies were recited, stretching back to the first voyagers, binding every person to the canoes that had arrived beneath the long white cloud. Disputes arose, as they always do, over land, over food, over mana, prestige, and authority. Yet resolution was sought through dialogue, through gift-giving, through shared memory of ancestry. The unity of origin kept the people strong. As generations passed, settlements spread from the far North Island to the cold shores of the south. Forests were cleared for gardens. Waka crossed straits, carrying goods, people, and stories. The people hunted moa, the great flightless birds, towering over them in size. Feathers and meat were taken, bones shaped into tools, until the moa grew scarce, a reminder of how fragile abundance could be. From island voyagers, the people of Aotearoa became masters of valleys and mountains. The sea was still loved, still traveled, but the land had taken root in their hearts. By the fires at night, elders told both old and new tales. They spoke of Hawaii, the homeland across the sea. They spoke of Kupu, the great navigator said to have first glimpsed these shores, and they spoke of their own journey, how their ancestors had followed stars southward until the long white cloud appeared. Children listened, eyes wide, knowing that they were heirs to two worlds, the ocean that had carried them and the land that now sustained them. And so the voyagers became a people reborn, Māori, descendants of navigators, guardians of Aotearoa. Chapter 8. Legacy of the Māori and the Ocean Road. Generations have passed since the great canoes first touched the shores of Aotearoa. Yet the memory of the voyage has never faded. It lives in chants, in carvings, in stories whispered by firelight. The ocean remains present in every breath of wind, in every crash of wave, in every star that shines above the land. Children grow up hearing that they are descendants of voyagers, children of Hawaii, heirs to navigators who once read the sea like a book. When they look at the stars, they see not just points of light, but pathways, guiding lines across the heavens. For the Māori, the ocean is not only water, it is ancestor, alive and sacred. The waves are kin, the winds are messengers, the currents are the arms that once carried their forebears southward. Canoes are built not as machines, but as living beings, carved with faces, adorned with feathers, launched with chants. Each waka is a bridge between people and sea, between past and future. To set foot on a canoe is to walk with the ancestors. To lift a paddle is to join their strength. Every voyage, even short ones along a river or bay, echoes the great journey across the Pacific. The legacy of the voyagers is also preserved in art. Meeting houses stand with beams carved into spirals and figures, each line holding meaning. Shell inlay glimmers in firelight, representing stars. Songs describe not only battles and births, but also the feel of swells beneath a canoe. the flight of birds pointing toward land. Genealogies are recited in endless strands, names flowing like rivers, binding each person to the canoe that carried their ancestors, to the navigator who first sighted the long white cloud. Memory itself becomes a living canoe carrying identity forward. Life in Aotearoa is rich, but not without tension. Hapu and iwi, sub-tribes and tribes, rise, each with its leaders, its lands, its mana. Disputes flare, sometimes resolved with gifts, sometimes with war. Yet even conflict is carried within a framework of ancestry, for enemies often share the same forebears if traced far enough back. Through struggle and peace alike, the sense of belonging deepens. Maori identity grows strong, rooted in land and ocean both. The forests, rivers, and mountains become more than resources. They become ancestors, too. The great kauri trees are seen as elders, standing in silent watch. Rivers are spoken of as veins of the land, carrying life from mountain to sea. Mountains themselves are regarded as living beings, their peaks clothed in snow, their slopes in green. The people live not apart from nature, but within it, bound to it. Every bird snared, every eel caught, every tree felled is taken with karakia, ritual words, acknowledging the spirit of what is given. The journey is never forgotten. It is the foundation of identity, the reason why every Maori can say, "We are the children of navigators. We are the people of the long white cloud. The long road has brought us here, to Aotearoa, to belonging, to peace. Let the waves carry you now softly into sleep."